Naka bynta ke khubor baman kasni pet but subscribe ya u Antor News. Kublay pi baro kinilong ki khubor bamta kasni. Kakinhun menteri ha kajinyalam chung konrat ki sang makla lumya kajinyalang menteri men ha kakat pratrik banshim rai halor kajing betha ka sorkar pdeng. Ka sorkar jilla ha kasni balang kala ajing menjur ya ka draft chung ka Meghalaya Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Scheme 2023. Ka Sorkar jilla hadin ka jingyalang kanhun menteri kala shimrai ban pinbiang tarajur hapdeng ka jingdon kamban ailat kamai jakpo ya kinong shong dukan madan batru ka jingdon kamban pintikna ya ka shong suk shong san ka jingpalat ya ka jingkhap nya ka jingshngan jong kinong ya nong yang bat kiwe ya thu uba apo lingdo menteri sorkar bat uba deru unong aiktin ka sorkar MDA2 uba apo lingdo habakran shikilat pathai kubor kalarai ba ka sorkar jilla kan yat karkum ka Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act 2014 kabla menjur da ka sorkar India hausnem arhajar khatsau kabala batha ya baro ki jilla ka ri bakin thauno ya ki jong ki rule knang ban don ka kindon ya ka jingya shong dukan madan barban ai jingya dai ka hok jong ki nong shong dukan madan Shushu ka jingyalang jong ka kinhun menteri u menteri rangba ka jilla konrad ki sangma ula penna ba ka kinhun menteri kala ai jing menjur draft Meghalaya Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Scheme 2023 haringkat katu kat ne ki jing penkala ya ki kendon.
Some of these are routine matters, but others which are more important. One relates to a matter which is of concern to all of us, that is street vending and vendors. And the other matter relates to the power department, for which our minister in charge is here to review. On the first matter, which is the street vendors, as you are aware that there is a central act adopted, passed in 2014, called the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act of 2014, under which rules were framed by the state government in 2022. Now, as part of the process of the framing of these rules, a scheme was conceived known as the draft Meghalaya Street Vendors Scheme 2023. And today this draft was approved by the cabinet with few observations and amendments. Basically, the intention of the government is that we strike a balance between the need of providing livelihood to street vendors and the need to also ensure that other equally important issues like law and order, decongestion, and safety to pedestrians, and the fact that, as we observed in the recent fire incident, how street hawkers were a major cause of the delay in the intervention by the fire services in containing the inferno at Kandaila. So today, the scheme was approved, and the salient features of this scheme I can share with you. But broadly, it speaks of town vending committees who will be eligible to be identified as legal hawkers. There are a set of criteria clearly laid down. For instance, the person has to possess an epic issued by the Election Commission of India, plus a certificate of at least 6 years, 3 years residence in Meghalaya. The vendor should have been vending in a particular spot for a minimum of 6 months, and 3, he possesses a valid trade license in areas that are outside of the 3 normal areas under the control of the Shillong Municipal Board. We have also received a number of suggestions from various stakeholders, including the KHADC, KSU, Sanjog Kirangba Shnong, Hawkers Associations, and today, after very detailed discussions, we have been able to finalize this scheme, and what we will now do next is to immediately take up an inventarization. We will start with the survey of the street vendors and process the applications of these vendors based on the broad framework which I have spelled out. Then we will also be taking up this special planning in order to decide which are vending and which are no vending zones. And the government would also strive to provide dedicated vending zones and market spaces to the street vendors. So broadly, this is what the scheme is as conceived earlier and as approved by the cabinet today.
So,
this will be based on the cabinet decision today. We will notify the scheme and also notify the areas which we will be covering immediately. So it should take about a couple of months.
by when are you planning to actually complete this whole exercise?
See, in 2 months' time, we will be ready with the registration process. After that, we then decide on which areas will be vending and which areas will be no vending zones.
This scheme deals with legal hawkers, but we are seeing that in Shillong City, almost everywhere, there are thousands of hawkers who are like illegal. So what will be their case?
Based on the survey and the documentation process, which I have spelled out, that they have to possess, for instance, an EPIC, that they are voters of the state of Meghalaya, and also that they have stayed in Meghalaya for at least the last 3 years, and that they have been trading or vending in a particular place for a minimum of 6 months, and also that they possess a trade license based wherever the Trading by Non-Tribals Act is applicable. Okay, based on their having met these conditions, we will then separate, the legal from the illegal, and only legal, authorized, registered vendors will be given spaces in the vending zones.
Bapun, what about these vendors who are occupying the footpaths and whereas pedestrians are...
That is the task before us is to decide on which are the vending and which are the no vending zones. And obviously, footpaths will not be allowed to be declared as vending zones.
Which are the areas which are most likely to be vending zones?
Which are?
The areas in town which are more likely to be...
No, based on the based on this master plan and the identification of zones will be based on certain criteria. For instance, we will make sure that these zones will not impede the movement of traffic, the movement of pedestrians, will not cause law and order issues. Those are factors that will be taken into account.
Bapal, will these vending zones be an open area or a building or something?
We are at the moment talking about open spaces. But when you talk about the matter that you brought up, this relates to markets. We have a plan in mind to also construct hawkers markets. As and when that is done, we will inform you.
So as per your data, what is the report of how many legal and illegal hawkers in the state?
There's no legal, there's no illegal as of now because the scheme has not been in place.
No, but the figure, the total,
Roughly
forget about
the number
legal.
of
How many
hawkers.
are?
Yeah.
Yeah, roughly maybe in not only in municipal area but outside municipal area maybe. Is it also outside municipal area you're talking about?
All.
We don't have that, but more or less
Shillong.
3,000 will be there.
But there are hawkers who have
1,000
already
plus.
registered themselves with the office of SMB. What will happen to them?
No, once this is a specific scheme that only today received the approval of the cabinet. So this scheme will ensure that
They are registered.
the registration process is
Legally,
legal now. Because this scheme is part of a central act and we are framing the rules and the scheme in accordance with that central act.
We do have two types of hawkers, we may say. One is who sit in the same place and the other one is mobile hawking. And is there any
yes.
plan that will do something for this mobile hawking also?
Once an area is declared as a vending zone, it will apply to everybody. And likewise, a no vending zone. Okay.
Bappa, my question is, this will take some time and it will be a tedious process to identify who are genuine, who are not. So don't you think that the government has been too lenient all this while, which allows them to occupy the footpaths and roadside, which cause a lot of problems to pedestrians as well, in the name of livelihood and then also affect others?
You see, as I mentioned earlier, under this central act, okay, the state had only adopted the act in 2022. Right. So that was just last year. And today the government, if you talk of government, this government is barely 7 months old. So now that we are seized of the enormity of the problem, we are determined to, as I said, have a fine balancing between somebody's need for livelihood and others' need for safety and free movement and not causing inconvenience to pedestrians or motorists, which is why this scheme has been envisaged and approved by the cabinet today.
Will this particular act be applicable to 6 scheduled areas also where the falls under the jurisdiction of the
Yes,
TJDC?
yes. As I mentioned, the requirement for a trade license would mean that it is applicable in areas outside the control of the municipal board, where you don't even know the exact number of persons involved in that trade. Whether we would know whether that person who avails a license would today sit in Lamkra and tomorrow shift to Polo. So how do you regulate unless you have this scheme in mind, in place? So, which is why today we have approved this scheme in order to be able to regulate vending, and it is only when we do that that any authority can, issue licenses. And for instance, there is a role for the Darbar Shnongs, okay, that they shall also have to furnish a certificate from respective Darbar Shnongs. Now, unless you have a scheme in place, how does the Darbar issue a certificate for somebody who keeps moving from one locality to the other?
So are we to understand that this survey also will, facilitate the process of registration of all hawkers and vendors in Shalom?
Yes, the whole purpose of the scheme is to facilitate registration of these hawkers based on certain parameters, and once they fulfill the criteria as defined by those parameters, We will then have a list, and this list will be put up before the vending committees, the town vending committees, which will then approve the list accordingly.
Just clarification. Who do we? I mean, how does the government identify a hawker, and will the food truck be also in the ambit of this news?
Will the
Food trucks.
food trucks?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking of mobile,
Yeah, the
mobile vending. Yes, it's going to be part of this.
How does the government define a hawker? Like, who are the hawkers?
We have stationary hawkers, we have mobile hawkers. Person who sit in the particular place is a stationary hawkers. The person, a mobile hawkers need not be a vehicle hawkers also. It may be a person who is carrying vegetable from one place to another place. So it includes all that. And we will have also a special thing called night hawking, which we will declare some particular zone for night hawking from a particular time, from a certain time to maybe 7 to 10 or whatever. Okay, so hawkers that are day hawkers, there are night mobile hawkers, and a night hawking zone will be also planned. According to the planning authority, we will have some night hawking also.
Bapol ngi ba fikir bukan hiti ho ka sumber pendik kini mo thor abada nu kijing jandai ta fikir am kini kijing encourage ini kini building he ma hadu hasurok fikir am kata kijing encouragement jeng tiki dukan pan
Kini kejikan mentak
We will have some
sni
area specified, sir. For them.
bangin pen
So this scheme will specify the area, how much it should occupy, what will be the vertical thing.
kani kejing ong kejong pi bakin jong kat bakiman sisien bangila declare menta ngila map choi ki area ngila map nang tu ngin sa declare kino kideki vending kino kideki no vending zones kino ki jaga belong ban kai kino ki bomlong dala dep kata ngila buru ba the prescribed dimensions along 2.2 square meter area and not more than 3 meters for vertical vending from the ground. Na madan shalor.
And which street will be one side, which street will be both side. All that is specified in the scheme.
when it will be implement when?
After the survey is done, after registration is done, then certificate of vending will come. Then in which area, how many hawkers will sit, the holding capacity also will be calculated. And that's the thing.